perspectives aren't talking to each other, but here they do. Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America's talking about. Elections and Donald Trump's ongoing push to federalize them. On social media tonight, President Trump falsely claimed that American elections have been rigged and stolen, and he urged Republicans to pass the SAVE Act, issuing a list of several demands. Trump insisted that voters show ID at polling places, which is already required by law in most states. All voters show proof of citizenship, also required in many states across the country. And lastly, Trump called for the elimination of mail-in ballots, which he has long and falsely claimed are a source of rampant voter fraud. Now, in the fight against Trump's bid to transform American elections, some Democrats are now reviving a controversial analogy.
It's Jim Crow 2.0, and I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance, if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country.
So we'll get to the details of what the SAVE Act is and what it is not. But Ashley, I want to ask you about the rhetoric choice, because I think that is the thing that some people, both on the left and the right, are criticizing him for.
Well, I think he used that phrasing because historically in this country, during the civil rights movement, there have been poll taxes, there has been discriminatory practices to prevent women, to prevent black people to vote in his lifetime. And what we saw after the 2020 election, when Joe Biden won, we see a president that still falsely claims the election was stolen with him, which is not true. We saw states all over the country push aggressive voter registration bills to try and suppress the vote. So would I say Jim Crow 2.0? No, but do I think there are tactics that this administration, that the SAVE Act are using to potentially diminish and suppress votes, not just of people of color, but of elderly folks, of young people, of lower income folks? Yes.
I guess that's the thing. I mean, look, there are some real concerns about the SAVE Act, but can you do it without drawing a parallel to Jim Crow, which was a very specific thing? And it was about more than just voting. It was also about racial violence, et cetera.
Of course you can, right? I mean, and this is the problem, right, is that you can make an argument against the SAVE Act, right? I could present a case for you against it. It has nothing to do with Jim Crow, right? I mean, the idea that we're talking about targeting a particular community, I would think there'd be a particular sensitivity with something like that, where there was a particularly targeted community. Who's the targeted community here? It's a lot of people, right? They say, oh, it's lower income people, it's people who are in rural areas, it's potentially people of color, it's a whole
married women,
right? It's a whole bunch of different people. You can argue that you shouldn't do it for a variety of reasons, but to compare it to Jim Crow completely undermines Schumer's argument entirely.
Yeah, I want to say that I think this is a little bit less about the substance of the SAVE Act, which would disenfranchise disproportionately people of color who are maybe less likely to have a passport than their white counterparts, or young people, 20-somethings, who do not know where their birth certificate is right now in this moment. But it's more about a skepticism towards Democrats and Democratic leadership and Schumer, who have failed to show up time and time again, failed to show a fight. And in the online narratives I've been seeing, this has been labeled in some ways as race baiting, right? And I think it speaks more to a skepticism to these leaders than the substance of this act.
There's real substance here. I mean, you mentioned maybe younger voters, even voters of color, but actually there's also concerns that a lot of rural voters might be disenfranchised by this. And in general, more than 9%, according to the Brennan Center analysis, 9% of American citizens of voting age, 21.3 million people, don't have proof of citizenship readily available. At least 3.8 million don't have these documents at all because they were lost, destroyed, or stolen. Over 8% of self-identified white Americans don't have citizenship documents readily available. A large percentage of Americans don't have passports, many of them in red states. So, I mean, I get the idea that Republicans think that this is like a one-up on voter ID, but it could also be something that kind of is like the door slamming them right back in the face.
Schumer's on the wrong side of this issue. 8 in 10 CNN poll, 8 in 10 Americans support showing photo identification, just like you would when you rent
Separate issue from the SAVE Act.
It's a different, yes, it's a different issue.
Related, though. All under the umbrella of Democrats being on the wrong side of where American public support is. Look, so much of this is politics. It is. This is an election year. The digital fundraising content is coming out of the Democrats right now. These buzzwords, this is what people on both sides of the aisle do. This is an election year. It's a midterm election year. This is about ginning up the base, and that's exactly what
But you're a practitioner of politics, campaigns. If you, realistically, I mean, nationwide, show me your birth certificate or a passport in order to vote before the next presidential election, you really think that that's not going to have an impact on Republicans as well as Democrats?
Sure, and the fact that Republicans are calling for these measures, we should all care about election security. We should all care about voter rolls being purged and dead people being pulled off.
Yeah.
We should all care about these things.
Yeah.
Even if Republicans are impacted by it.
We also should all care that when you lose an election, you acknowledge it, you accept it, and you move on, and you don't hold this fight 6 years later. But we aren't here, which is why we have the SAVE Act. And when you look at data, when I was in law school, my first summer, I remember working at the Brennan Center. It was my first internship in law school. And I remember asking someone who is now a circuit court judge and saying, why are we fighting this one case? Because it actually doesn't determine the outcome of an election. And she says, because every single vote matters if you have the right to vote. So Democrats and Republicans want all people who are eligible and legal to vote to actually be able to vote. What we don't want is that there are higher benchmarks for some people to be able to vote and some people not to be able to vote. The SAVE Act is unnecessary. The reason why Donald Trump is doing that is a tactic because y'all are on shaky ground right now for these midterms. The public, maybe people are with you 8 to 10 on voter ID, but they are not with you 8 to 10 on immigration right now, which is what you want on 2024. So there are tactics that are being deployed right here that are also political on the Republican side, and we can't just play blind to
But let's not conflate the SAVE Act with voter fraud, right? I mean, that's what's sort of happening now, right? Is these ridiculous claims about the 2020 election and voter fraud with a separate issue, which is a serious, legitimate debate about the SAVE Act, right? And every time Donald Trump says something that is incredibly excessive or 15 places that we need to nationalize the elections, the response is, well, he was talking about the SAVE Act. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the SAVE Act.
Yes.
So the point is that, like, let's debate the SAVE Act. Let's have a serious conversation about it. I think there are arguments for and against it, but it has nothing to do with nationalizing elections or voter fraud in Georgia.
Yeah, there's a desire to, as I like to say, launder Donald Trump's words. But I think it also is kind of an insult to the intelligence of the American people who see and hear what he is saying and take him at his word. And one other thing, I mean, I just want to play this. This is Caroline Levitt. She was asked about Steve Bannon's calls for Trump to deploy ICE, and I want you to listen to what she had to say.
Steve Bannon recently said, quote, we're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. Is that something that the president is considering?
That's not something I've ever heard the president consider, no.
You can guarantee to the American public that ICE will not be around polling locations or voting locations in November?
I can't guarantee that an ICE agent won't be around a polling location in November. I mean, that's frankly a very silly hypothetical question. But what I can tell you is I haven't heard the president discuss any formal plans to put ICE outside of polling locations. It's a disingenuous question.
So, Steve, those are Steve Bannon's comments that she was asked about. But the other part of the context is that Trump himself said earlier this week that he believes that federal agents should be overseeing the votes and counting the votes. So why can't the White House be, unequivocal about what the Constitution says about who runs elections in this country?
Well, she was pretty clear. She's never heard the president say he wants to put ICE agents at polling locations. I think what she was also saying is, can I guarantee one's not going to be driving by one of the thousands upon thousands of polling locations on a particular day? No, I couldn't guarantee that. But there's obviously no plan to deploy ICE agents. Regarding elections, my view is they're run by the states. They should be run by the states. The diffused nature of our election system is a good thing. It generally leads to security. That doesn't mean, though, that there aren't already federal hooks into the elections. The Voter Registration Act requires states to try to keep their voter rolls clean. Many of them do not. The Help America Vote Act does the same thing. So there are already some federal requirements on states to try to engage in some best practices. Right. For what purpose? To give people confidence that the election is running fairly. Now, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about, people believing that elections have been stolen. It's not just 2020. A majority of Democrats in this country think the 2016 election was stolen, and I suspect a great many Democrats still think 2004 and 2000 were stolen as well. So this is a problem that has plagued both parties, the idea that they don't believe the outcome of elections, and the way we...
I'd like to clarify that point, though, as I just want to say, there were people in 2004 that thought voter suppression tactics were taking place in this state, which could still be a true statement, but what never happened after 2004 was an insurrection at the Capitol. In 2016, there was proof that there were external foreign agitators that were targeting certain types of... No. What I am saying and what Donald Trump said is not very different.
That's the bipartisan conclusion of a congressional investigation.
My political analysis is that a majority of Democrats think the 2016 election was stolen.
What Ashley just said.
Poll after poll after poll.
Majority of Democrats? I've never heard
Dan,
that. Really?
if you walked into a Democrat political dinner tonight and said Russia did not steal the election, you'd be thrown out.
Can I be clear?
It is actually a good question where those numbers come from.
As a reliable source here, I walk into Democratic dinners every night, and just let me tell you, we're not talking about whether the 2016
but if you polled it, to be honest, if you polled it, come on, guys.
I think it's really
important. Phrase the question differently.
Because how many Democratic dinners have you been at lately, Scott?
I look at a lot of polls. I'm just telling you, Democrats believe the 2016 election was stolen by Russia.
No, my friend.
And in 2000 and 2004, Democrats on the floor of the House tried to stop the electoral college.
Let me tell you what a lot of Democrats believe and what a lot of Republicans believe, including the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who was a part of the process of looking into this, that Russia did, in fact, interfere in the 2016 election. That is not a conspiracy. It is not a hoax.
Do you think the election was illegitimate?
Scott, I didn't say it was illegitimate.
Because we didn't charge the Capitol.
It is a fact that Russia interfered in the 2016.
Everybody at this table knows a majority of Democrats think Russia stole the election.
Hang on a second.
That's right.
You can talk about that, but we're talking about what Ashley is saying, which is that Democrats acknowledge something that also some Republicans acknowledge too, which is that Russia interfered. That is not to say that all Democrats believe that Hillary Clinton was duly elected, because if they did, then maybe they would have done what Trump supporters said.
There were a handful of Democrats in 2016 who didn't vote to authorize certify the election.
Yeah.
A handful. There were,
they also didn't go tell their constituents to come storm the Capitol either.
But just look at the numbers, right? It was 100 and something in 2020 of Republicans who were saying we're not going to certify the election. Now, you can argue Democrats started it, right? And look what they started and look what they sowed. Okay. You can make that argument. But based on the numbers, I don't think the majority of Democrats believe it. They may believe, if you rephrase the question, if you say, do you think James Comey had an impact on the Russia?
So the next, if you say that, I'm going to make a very provocative claim about Republicans, and then you're going to have to accept that.
All right. We'll try to get to the bottom of where Scott's getting his polling. And if Scott's right, if Scott's right on that polling, he's right on the polling, but we'll try to find it for next time. Next for us, last stop, Trump Station, now landing at Washington's Trump Airport. Well, the president is telling Senator Chuck Schumer that there is a price to pay if he wants the billions of dollars that are already approved by Congress for an infrastructure project. Plus, Hillary Clinton's message to Republicans: make the Epstein hearing, where her and Bill will testify, public.